Welcome to Networking Unleashed, Building Profitable Connections, where real conversations create real opportunities. I'm your host, Michael Forman, and this show is about more than meeting people. It's about rebuilding, strengthening, and protecting the relationships that actually support your success. Today's conversation hits a reality many professionals face. Your world changes, your circle shifts. The old way of networking no longer works. My guest is a disciplined international, I'm sorry, my guest is a disciplined, intentional approach to rebuilding a network from the ground up with structure, follow up, and self leadership at the center of it all. I'm just confusing all my words together. We're talking about how to choose the right connections, how to lead yourself before you're reaching out to others, and how to turn follow up into repeatable habits instead of forgotten tasks. If you're ready to stop leaving relationships to chance and start building connections that last, you're exactly where you need to be. So buckle up, Buttercup, get ready, because we're going to begin this podcast. Anca, I just want to welcome you to the podcast. I'm so glad that you're here. And why don't you give us a little backstory of how you got here today?
Well, Michael, thank you so much for having me. Super excited to be part of this conversation. And in a short synopsis, I would say that I first started my professional career in radio. This was back in Romania while I was still high school and college. I graduated in computer science. Didn't want to do much in it. Funny how life plays you when, many years later, all you do is coding and computer and AI. So that's just the irony of things. But really, what I wanted to do with my life was invest myself in AV production, which is like unheard of if you're a young girl in Romania, in a country that's traditionally and culturally quite traditional in that sense. Like the expectation was that I was gonna finish college, get married, have kids, and forget about my professional career. That did not work out for me too well. That was not the dreams that I had for myself. So, because it didn't pan out to be the direction that I wanted, I decided to work just enough to get myself a one-way ticket to US, the land of all opportunities. That's what I had in my mind that this would be. And I started my career in AV production actually in LA from the ground up. Actually, my card to get in that field was knocking at doors and telling people, hey, I can fix your computers if you teach me how to do production. And that worked once, and that's all I needed. And I started working for this production company down in LA, and we did a lot of amazing shows, a lot of A-list celebrities, runaway shows, and a lot of good stuff that really got me to be hands-on and learn everything that there was to learn about audio production, video production, lighting, everything and anything under the sun in that space. And after doing that for a while, I burned out because I happen to be someone that truly invests themselves in all the way. And then I moved to Portland, Oregon to start working in corporate events because I figured that's an easier lifestyle than live events, than setting up stages in the middle of nowhere or putting on, those concerts, which is a lot of hard manual physical work. So that's when I started my family as well. Eventually, that led to starting my own production agency. And a lot of the clients that I have made relationship with and network with carried over to my agency. And then we moved to Boise, where I now live. Boise was an opportunity for my husband. It didn't really quite matter for me where I was because I was doing a lot of remote work anyway. And one thing led to another. I got into other things. I started my own podcast because at one point had those thoughts about, hey, I used to love doing radio. Like I used to really enjoy that. How come I don't have a podcast? And so I did, which now is one of the top event podcast in event technology and AI. and it's in its 11th season, so it's been a minute. Also, I started doing a lot of speaking on stages about AV production at first, advocating for more women behind the scenes. That's been something that I pioneered over the years because for many years I happened to be the only woman behind the scene. I was running a team, I was either hands on mixing or doing something of a technical capacity, and I was always surrounded by guys, always. So it was like you look around and like, how come I'm the only one? Where are the other women? So you realize that there's a lot of things that come in the way of that. And a lot of that has to do, yes, with the physical aspect of hard work. Even now, if you go to an event and you look behind the scenes, for the most part, you're going to see the tech team being predominantly male, right? Because not only do you get there to be looking pretty and mixing and pretending like you know what all these buttons do, but you have to be there at 4 a.m. when you load in, and you have to be there at 3 a.m. when you load out. So it's a very long span day that is very physical. So a lot of women tend to shy away from that. Now, as far as I'm concerned, I never shied away from hard work, physical or not. I grew up hard work environment, like working the fields when I was a child. My parents had a farm, and you did what you had to do, which also later in life pushed me into bodybuilding. I realized my body is really strong. I can carry, not just I can carry a lot of weight, I can lift a lot of weight, but I'm really built this way. So that's pushed me into bodybuilding, into competing, into doing really well. And all of that coming around the circle of life is that now I embed a lot of those lessons learned under the barbell into the Fit for Events framework, which is leading the conversations in the event space about burnout, about performance, about capacity, mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual health are the pillars that I really care about under that framework. AI is a big part of the conversation, right? It has really changed how we do things, how we automate a lot of the manual tasks that we used to spend quite a bit of time on just in the last few years alone. And as someone that I really stayed on top of the latest and the greatest, not just in AV production, but also in technology, event technology, and anything and everything, I think I just had a bit of a skill set to really learn things easily and apply them practically, and then be able to tell others how things work. I took it upon myself right when ChatGPT came out in 2022, something like that. It was like around right after COVID, to learn what this thing is. What does it do? How does it work? How can I make my life easier? Basically, that was like the whole point of it. So that's my trajectory through life. And but coming back to our conversation, to the topic that I know you're so fond of, all of that would not be possible without relationships, without connections, without people, right? Like you can look at your life and say, I have accomplished so many things, but that would be such vanity and so much ego embedded into that. Whereas everything that I have accomplished is because there's someone along the way that supported my growth trajectory. Like when I got to LA and I ended up working in this production house, I met this gentleman that was the CEO of the company in. And to this day, he's one of my best friends. We're talking about 20 something years of a friendship, that a very professional friendship, but it's those people that you meet along the way, they mentor you, and then in return, I hope that you give back, right? So for me, the way I give back is to the community of women in events. I started an entire community of women in the events behind the scenes. The girls that want to get in lead tech positions, but they don't always know where to start, or they don't know what to do, or they don't know what they need to know, or who they need to talk to get the opportunities that a lot of guys get automatically just because of the bias that still exists. If you're a guy, you must know how to do this. Whereas someone that comes in as a young girl, she's going to be questioned, she's going to be tested, and then she's going to have to prove herself again and again.
It's quite extensive, I want to tell you. I have a series of questions for you. You've answered the majority of them just by speaking first, but I'm going to go through the numbers. When
Hey,
someone's
I love
prof-
conversations, Michael. I don't love Q&A.
yeah,
It's
no,
like
this is more
pick and choose what makes more sense for us to delve more into.
this is more conversational. When someone's professional world shifts overnight, what's the first mindset change they must make before rebuilding their network?
So I think we all went through this, right, in 2020, when what happened, at least to my side of the industry, a lot of us, we have put our identity in what we do, right? And when events went away and we were faced with the question, who am I if I am not able to do the things that I used to do this entire time? That kind of shakes your worldview. That kind of shakes you internally, right? Because you have to now face the demons, to face the insecurities, to face yourself in a way that you were not willing to or able to because you are constantly busy. You're constantly running from one thing to the next. So I think what has helped me the most in that aspect is to be able to have a close network of people that could answer that for me when I couldn't see the trees because of the forest. I couldn't see beyond my reality, which was my whole professional foundation is gone. Now, what do I do? For me personally, that just meant reinventing what I have done in one space, which was the live events and in-person events, and transitioning that automatically in 3 days. I had one event that I had to take was 650 in person. We had to transition it to a virtual format and we had to figure it out. And that's been my way of reinventing. Okay, I have the skills. I know how that applies in this area. I'm gonna make it happen in a completely different space. We just need to figure out the framework, the model that would work, right? But that wasn't just me alone. It was a group of us putting our heads together. So that's where I think networking and relationship really matter because even though on the outside you could look at it and be like, we were competitors, we were all like trying to get those contracts, those events that would help us survive during a hard time. But what came out of that instead was a lot of collaboration. And there's this one term that I really liked during that time was called competition. Basically, yes, there's still competition happening, but there's also a lot of collaboration that is happening at the same time, right? At the same time, how I know that you can do, say, virtual events really good. I know I can also do virtual events really good because we are two different people. We have a two different set of skills, but also we have a different take on how that works, right? So that's kind of what came out of that hardship of figuring out how to turn this one lemon into lemonade, but not alone, but with others. Does that answer your question, Michael?
Yeah, I put a line in the sand when it comes to the pandemic, right? Before the pandemic, networking, as you say, was all transactional. Everybody was super
Mm.
busy and networking and everything else.
Yeah,
Once the pandemic happened, people had to stay inside. They had to do everything virtually. Like you said, in 3 days, that you had to transform from this outspoken person to some sort of a person behind a camera. But one thing that we had to learn or relearn was
yeah,
as we started to come out of the pandemic, we people weren't following it. They weren't getting back into the relationship side of the transaction. Things were all transactional beforehand. It's
yeah,
relationship oriented afterwards, and people forgot how to network. They forgot how to communicate. My goal after I'm doing all the workshops and keynotes and
mhm,
everything else is just telling people that, telling people, look, I always say 20 somethings in the audience, 30 somethings, they always raise their hands. Oh, yeah. I'm like, what I'm
yeah,
telling you is going to be completely Greek.
Yeah.
because nobody
Well,
showed you.
if I think about just the function of networking, if I were to dissect what is networking, I think for a lot of people, networking means collecting a bunch of contacts. But to me, is building alignment because people do not stay connected to you just because you have this job title, just because you are impressive in one way or another. I think they stay because they feel part of what you're building if you're able to draw them in. And the fastest way to lose someone is to just walking and trying to impress. At least for me, that does not work. That's actually such a turnoff. But then the fastest way on the flip side to build a network is to invite people into a shared direction. So I think what you're saying is that what the pandemic did, it brought us into this one shared direction for all of us to get out of it. And that was our shared vision. Eventually we did. And then the question that I have to you is, do you feel like our networking has gone back to our old habits, or do you feel like we're doing better because we had to go through it? Because sometimes I feel like we've forgotten a lot of the lessons we have learned during the
Well,
pandemic.
it's changed. It's changed. When I said it's more relational, it's I used to be in the mortgage industry, and when I went to a networking event, I came home with a shoebox filled with business cards, and I'd say, "Look how good I did," when I
Yeah.
did horribly. Now, the way I teach people is that if you go to a 3 or 4 hour networking event, you come back with 15, maybe 20 business cards because those are the people that you spoke with, you had a relationship with,
Mhm.
that you talked about something that you were familiar with. So if you spent 15, 20, 25 minutes with this person, you created that whole feeling. And I tell everybody on the back of the person's business card, there's a whole series of events that has to go in before you get there. But once you get that card, you write down the date, the name of the event, and something you spoke about. So when you follow up with them, you can remember what you spoke about. But that's where it is. It's 15 or 20 business cards instead of 200. That's
Absolutely. And then maybe out of those 15 business cards, you actually know something about those people. So when
yeah.
you follow up, you make it personal. I think that's the biggest thing that people forget, that for it to really grow beyond, hey, here's my business cards and thanks for your business card, which now it goes into shoebox that I'm not sure if I'm going to ever get back to ever again, is being able to come back to it and say, hey, Michael, I really liked when you told me XYZ about Georgia and how you used to live in New York and how winter was back then. And now, why is everybody talking about a snow megadon when we've
Yeah.
done survive worse time?
Exactly. And that's half the value of putting the information on the back of the business card for when you follow up. You start your follow up because remember now it takes between 8 and 15
Touch
touches
points.
before they even respond to you.
Yeah.
So it's all in the follow up. So let me go on. How do you decide who belongs in your next chapter when your old circle no longer fits where you're going?
That's a hard one. So I have a story to tell. When I
Okay.
embraced this bodybuilding journey, because I really needed to personally, when you come to hit the wall really hard and realize if I don't make some changes right now, something will break. So for me, that was going through another burnout cycle. And then, because again, I'm a workaholic. I sometimes try to say that I'm recovering, but I'm not. There's not much recovery from there. So I would work myself through this burnout cycles. Pandemic was one of those. Like after the pandemic, as we were like building this plane with virtual events, I got really busy and I was doing like 3 virtual events a day after day. It was like nonstop. So the work was great because we're making money, we're surviving, but it was taxing. Like when your office becomes your workplace and there you have no boundaries between going to work and coming from work, that can be very dangerous. So bodybuilding came out of that needing to remove myself from a space that now was like all involving in all areas of my life, personal and professional, and needing a space where I can go and not only work on my physical conditioning, but also on my mental capacity. I needed a place to break away from family, from work, from kids, so I can be by myself while also getting my system moving and working because you're sitting on a chair for hours in no end. And when I did that, and I started becoming successful at it in the sense that I started changing my body composition, I started looking completely different. I'm putting on muscle, I'm looking like pretty fit and shredded. My circle of friends started thinning out. They started becoming insecure in themselves because I no longer looked like them. And I had to, and also our priorities were no longer the same. And this happened even like with my own husband, like for a little bit, we were going through this hard patch because he was still overweight and he was still struggling to figure out what health looked like. And he started becoming jealous because I look so much better. And like now I have the hot wife, but the hot wife is really hot and I don't know what to do with it. And then eventually he had his own moment or revelation like, oh, but if I actually spend some time on my health, I could actually catch up with her. And thank God that he did that. He actually did not start bodybuilding with me. He's not the person to come into a gym and be indoors. He loves biking, he loves running, he's a marathon runner. And he started doing the things that he was passionate about, which completely changed then our dynamic and our priorities. So going back to friends and priorities, that's when I had to make a choice. There's people that I can no longer take with me in this future. And this future for me is health span, lifespan, feet span. The things that I care about now are no longer the same things that I used to care in the past. I no longer care to go to a party. I no longer care to have a wine at the end of the day. I no longer care to do all these happy hours, things that they don't serve me anymore. So that was a hard call because now I had to look at this group of friends that were dear to me and say, not necessarily say it to their face, but create the distance to choose only the ones that were just as mindful about their health as I was, so we can move together in step versus these other people. They're like almost shaming me into, why do you spend so many hours at the gym, like why do you have to look any better than what you already look, like all those things that they're toxic and that they just don't serve you. So that's where that needed a decision, and I needed to make that. And even though I still see those friends from time to time, I no longer spend my time like I used to in that cycle. Because what do they say about friendships? Don't they say that whom you surround yourself with, that's who you become? I already had a
Absolutely.
different vision of who I wanted to become, and the people around me did not serve that anymore.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And when you change your mindset, it's not that they had to change theirs completely, but if they didn't accept the way you changed, then really you're going to leave them behind because there's no place for them. And
Yeah,
how good of a friend were they really if they wouldn't adapt? So you
yeah,
weigh all that together.
yeah.
That's very good.
And sometimes
Um,
it's funny now because years later, as they kept seeing me improving and keeping at it, because it wasn't going to be just a season for me, they're snapping now into it themselves. In this cycle of life, I can see reconnecting eventually at the same level that we used to be if they're just as focused as me on the things that matter, on health span, like I said, and longevity and putting in the time. So there is redemption. It's just sometimes the timing can be off. And for me,
yeah.
that was true.
The their mindset where they would go to a bar, they go to after hours, and they go to whatever, their mind will shift and say, you know what, maybe I'll spend that extra time in the gym and we'll spend time together doing that. They'll still have a great time,
Yeah.
but your mind shifted. And if they will shift even half the way with yours, then you can be friends again. But if they're going to hold you back, then A, they really weren't friends to begin with, and B, you don't want them anymore.
Yeah.
In your experience, how does personal discipline show up in the quality of relationships
Mm.
people attract?
Yeah, I had to learn this the hard way.
Yes.
Again,
It's always
I
the
kind of
best
tend
way.
to learn lessons the hard way. This for me took the form of emotional relationships. I had this one emotional relationship that I struggled with the most because I really attached as a friend to someone that was not ready to have the same level of attachment. And I did not have the discipline to remove myself and let go. And I think that was actually the start of me needing to work on something else that I felt like I had control over. If my emotional life was like just out of control because I couldn't figure out how to get a hold of it and make it work for me instead of against me, I figure, okay, I'm going to work on my physical health because then at least I have control over that, like what I can do with my body and what my body can do. So to build the discipline for that to be true, it can take different forms and it can take a journey and a longer or a shorter journey depending of where you are, like depending where you are in your life. For the longest step, I've always, for me, the emotional aspect of myself was something that I didn't want to deal with. I'm someone that's very hard-headed. When I put something in my mind, I go and get it done, and there's very little outside influences to stop me from accomplishing what I put my mind to do, which was like I have this very strong will to get things done. And emotionally, if something didn't align with my drive, I would just throw it under the rug. It's not important. I'm not gonna deal with it. It's not necessarily for me to deal with it, which kind of like builds, right? It builds and it builds until at one point you're like, this can't build anymore. There's no more room in this tank to build, and it's going to come out. So I needed to figure out how to take control over that, how to be more disciplined with my emotions, the same way how I'm disciplined with my body, how I'm disciplined with my routine, with my calendar, with my relationships. So it was a hard lesson. And it took a few years for me to go through that whole process. Obviously, it took some help with a therapist, going back into your whole history. I didn't realize I had all this childhood drama that I needed to deal with. But I think at the end of the day, it comes down to needing to work on the things that you keep avoiding to work on, thinking that they don't matter until they really do. Because at the end of the day, discipline is just promising, is just keeping the promises you made to yourself, whatever that looks like in which area of your life. And it was important to me to be disciplined in all aspects of my life, but I couldn't handle it in some areas because there's too much work that needed to be done in the first place before I got to the level where I was ready for discipline to apply on top. It's like raising a kid that you're trying to discipline, but there's so much other things that get in the way of that because they're growing, because they're emotional, because they have resentment, because they think it's unfair, because all of those things that are packaged. And then when you're trying to discipline, it's just one thing that you're barely touching the surface, but you're not even getting to the root of the problem.
Yes, very good. Very good. Your fit for events framework.
Yes.
Adds structure and consistency to relationships.
Yeah.
What shifts when networking stops being casual and starts being intentional?
I think the biggest for me has been presence, spending intentional time with the people that I want to be closer with and the people that I wanted to grow with versus just spreading myself in small pieces here and there everywhere. And presence means putting aside sometimes your own schedule, your own priorities, just to have a conversation with someone, just to learn more about them, just to see where they're coming from so you understand what their challenges are, how you could help them in return. And then on still on the same token, I feel like None of this really works if there's so much, like, conferences are so prevalent where there's so much cognitive load and so much context switching that happens all the time. So your nervous system is constantly attacked. It's just basically wrecked. You go to an event and you come back and you feel like you need rest. You need to rest from the event, even though that was supposed to be something that was recreational, not just something that you worked. So one of the realizations that I had was that, one, there's those challenges that we all have that we need to be aware of. Two, you can communicate well and clearly when you're already tired, exhausted, and fried. And you can be present if all of those things are true. So the Fit for Events framework is more about how do we look at our mental, our emotional, our physical, and our spiritual capacity in a way that supports our leadership functions, in a way that supports our presence with other people. Not just self-care for myself, but capacity for others too. So in so many ways, high performance with regulation that can help you achieve your goals in whatever area or space that you're in. And the way we do that is by turning well-being into a system instead of just a phase. Oh, I'm just going to lose 20 pounds. No, that's not what we do. That's not what we want to do, right? Because it's not just something that you do now, it's something that you maintain. And it's like this lifestyle that you sign up for because you know it's good for you. One of the ways in which it's important for me to look at this, especially when I have those conversations, is let's look at what is your minimum standard on a very busy day, not your best day standard, right? Your worst day standard, the day when you are traveling for events, the day when you are working nonstop, the day when you're overbooked, the day when you're mentally wiped. Decide in advance what still counts as a win for you. That could be 20 minutes of walking around the block, or I don't know, hitting your protein goal, or not skipping lunch or breakfast or something, right? Because our systems survive on minimums, not just on motivation. And then pre-plan in advance relentlessly. I have gone through several bodybuilding prep phases while I was in the busiest season for events. And without pre-planning, that would have all failed. That would have not worked. So well-being does not survive improvisation. Oh, I'm going to figure it out. No, when you're hungry and you have to eat and you have to stay within your macros and within your goals, you don't make shit up. Like, you need to know in advance what are your options so you don't stray off, you don't fall off the wagon. So, for example, when you're traveling, you already know that you're going to stay at this hotel. You already know where your meals are coming from. You already know what that gym looks like. Plan in advance. Where are you going to eat? Like, I check out those restaurants around the area where I'll be to see their menu. Does it fit my goals? And I will go to the ones that do. So all of the, or if I feel like it does not, then I always pre-plan meals with me. I bring stuff with me. So I have, in the case where I might be on this trade show floor for 10 hours and there's nothing around this convention center where I can just go and grab something. And instead of just falling prey to the pizza that was delivered, because for some that's acceptable form of nutrition, I would rather have something with me ready to go, right? Because that not only removes the decision fatigue, but also protects that minimum standard that you set for yourself, no matter where your environment is and how it changes. And then thirdly, is the mindset that you spoke of right in the beginning. That's a non-negotiable. And I think a lot of people, they just keep negotiating with themselves because they're like, oh, I'm too tired. Oh, I don't feel like doing this today. And then they break some promises that they've made to themselves that if I go to this event, I'm going to work out every single day, or I'm going to have a walk around the hotel every single day, or I'm going to do a yoga, whatever it is that you want to do, right? For me, every kept promise to myself reinforces my identity. And it's not about just being extreme and strict with myself. It's about being honest, because all the systems that I build to support me, they're built on self-trust. And when that cracks, I think everything else follows. If I can trust myself to do what I said that I would, like, then I don't trust myself to do a bunch of other things.
Yes, yes, and yes. I agree with every point that you made, and
Thank you.
there are so I can really continue this podcast on for another 2 hours because I
Yes.
have about 20 questions just for you. But let's bring this podcast full circle. If someone wanted to rebuild a profitable, reliable network in the
Mm,
next 90 days, what's
mm.
one habit you would create that would create the biggest ripple effect?
I think one, you're probably the most expert to answer this, but if I were to just weigh in one thought that came to me as you were asking the question is when you talk to someone, I never pitch myself. My job is not to pitch. My job is to have a conversation with them where there's this one quiet question in the back of their mind, in their nervous system, which is asking, do I belong in this relationship? And my job is to make sure that they do, because if that is true, then everything else from there, it's easier. So everything else could be working together on a project. Everything else could be partnering on some event. Everything else could be selling business services and whatnot, right? Everything else could be me being invited to speak at their event next time we meet again, right? If I am able to provide a level of comfort where they know that I welcome them and I feel I make them feel like they belong, I think everything else is so much easier. I didn't understand this for a very long time, and it took me a while to grow to really understand what that means. Because at the end of the day, like you turn the mirror, like, and you look in the mirror and say, what would I want from this? What would make me feel comfortable to want to work with this person again? And that's, if you can answer that, then I think it's easier to then apply it to your network, to your relationship. Because again, going back to one of those famous cringy phrases that are very true, your network is your net worth at the end of the day. And for me, nothing has been more true than growing my LinkedIn network, but not just growing for the sake of growing a number, but really having relationships with those people, as in I know who I can go to because I know what they do, I know what they care about, and I know what are their forte, right? So I don't care to accept people in my network just because they're there. I care to accept them because we have a common goal. And I think that's probably where that belonging comes into play the most.
You again, you touched on so many points. I happen to have 8 digital courses on my website,
I knew
and
you're the expert, Michael.
my main course is called Network to Net Worth.
Mhm.
That is the main course.
Makes
And as
sense.
soon as you said it, I was like, oh my God, there it is. And
Have I
you just,
studied your courses?
yeah, but let's go on. Just take a look what I have because they're really good. I can have a whole section just on each of the things that you touched upon. But anyway, but if somebody wanted to contact you, wanted to hire you, or just discuss something with you, where's the best place to find you?
As I mentioned, LinkedIn is the best place I would ask people to connect with me because I think it's a safe environment, but also I share a lot of things that I'm passionate about, including AI news, including the podcast, including bodybuilding. I have several pillars that I distribute this content in, and that's the best place. Obviously, I have websites and emails and all that, but I think that's one platform that we can all connect on and feel like it's safe enough.
That's it. Perfect. That's what intentional networking sounds like: clear direction, consistent action, and relationships built with purpose. If today's episode got you thinking about who's in your circle, how you follow up, or how you show up as a leader in your own network, take one step today, act on it. Strong connections are built through consistency, not intentions. If you found value here, share this episode with somebody who's rebuilding, resetting, or ready for their next chapter. Make sure you subscribe to Networking Unleashed, Building Profitable Connections, so you don't miss the conversations that help you connect smarter and grow stronger. And if you're ready to sharpen your networking skills even further, visit Forman.com to see how I work with professionals, teams, and organizations. So until next time, lead yourself well, follow up with purpose, and build connections that work as hard as you do. Anca, I can't begin to thank you enough for the time that you spent with us, and thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Well, hold on, folks. Don't go anywhere. Let's hear from our sponsors. David Neal, co founder, Revved Up Kids. Revved Up Kids is on a mission to protect children and teens from sexual abuse, exploitation, and trafficking. They provide prevention training programs for children, teens, and adults. To learn more, go to revvedupkids.org. Henry Kaplan, Century 21. When it comes to making the biggest financial decision of your life, leave it in the hands of a proven professional, Henry Kaplan. Henry is a global real estate agent with Century 21, celebrating his 41st year in business. No matter where you're moving, Henry has the right connections for you. You can contact Henry at 561 427 4888. A huge thank you to our guest for sharing such incredible insights today. And of course, a big shout out to you, our amazing listeners, for tuning in and spending your time with us. If you're interested in my digital courses, being coached, or having me come and talk to your company, just go to Michael and fill out the request form. Remember, networking isn't about being perfect, it's about being present. So take what you've learned today, get out there, and make some meaningful connections. If you've enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who could use a little networking inspiration. Let's keep the conversation going. You can find me on Apple, Spotify, Pandora, YouTube, or my website, forman.com/podcasts.